My name's Zach Dingy. I run a solar sales company that does over $100 million a year. And today I want to talk about some mistakes I've had with spending money, what kind of my rules are for making money, what do I look at when I look at my accounts. A lot of people have their own thoughts on there's all these rules and analogies that Dave Ramsey talks about. And those are all great. And I think those are very, very good to use. But I think for the people watching this video is more for someone who's kind of leveling up in life and they went from maybe 40 grand to 150 grand to 250 grand to 350 grand and they're growing every year. Your income has grown by 50 to 100% a year. It kind of gets weird with how you spend your money, and you usually make a lot of mistakes like I do, which I'll talk about in this video. But I think the main thing is you have to determine what it is you're trying to solve for. So I think the majority of mistakes people make are in the spending money category. But before that, let me just give you an overarching kind of theme about making money. My belief is you're not going to get rich saving $500 a month. If you invest $500 a month for 25 years, you're really not going to have that much money left over. And also, I'm not trying to solve for retiring at 65. I'm trying to solve for how do I have millions of dollars and be extremely rich by 30, right? I don't want to wait until I'm too old. I want it now. So the first rule of all of this is you have to make more money than your expenses by miles. Rule number one, and I'm going to put a number which is 10x. So when I'm looking at what I spend my money on, what are my monthly expenses, my house, my car payments, insurance, grocery, gas, all of that totaled up. Let's say my total monthly expenses right here are $10,000 a month, 10K a month. This is my mortgage, this is my car payments, this is insurance, this is everything I just said. My goal is to make $100,000 a month. Now I know this seems unreasonable, but in the world we live in today, we live in a K-shaped economy. Middle class gets squeezed, you're either rich or broke. That's kind of how this works. And so what I want to do is I want to make more money than my expenses by miles, because being rich and being broke is not exactly about your asset allocation or how much money you make. It's about how much more do you make than your living expenses. So you can be broke making 40K a month if you spend 35K a month. If all you have left over is $5,000, you spent a lot of money. You may still feel broke. But if your expenses are 30K a month and you're making 150K, you're going to feel pretty rich. So it's not necessarily about this. And then these are kind of extreme examples. Let's say your living expenses are 3K a month, but you make $8,000 a month. You're at a little over 2 times your expenses. You'll probably feel pretty good. So the thing about making money is it's about what it is in comparison to what you want. Now, the second part of this equation is it may be okay because right now your living expenses are $5,000 a month and you're making 50 grand a month, right? But here's the thing that people forget. This is called lifestyle creep. When you make 5K a month and you are making, let's say, 50K a month is $600,000 a year. So this is phenomenal. And your expenses are 5K a month. However, when you start making 600K a year, what usually happens? This number right here usually goes up. So now when your expenses go from 5K a month to you want a cool car now, you want a bigger house, you want to buy nicer stuff, you want to go to fancier dinners. Now all of a sudden you start spending 20K a month on expenses. Now here's the problem. You got to go 10x your income. You got to make 200 grand a month. Now, again, I know sounds crazy and unreasonable, but that's how you have to be. If you want to really make life-changing money, if you want to really change your family, if you want to have all the things, I want to make so much more money than my expenses to the point where I can invest tens of thousands of dollars a month. I think if you're not investing tens of thousands of dollars a month today, it's almost impossible to become rich. If you look at the valuation of the dollar goes down. This year, I think it's down 8% already or 10% or something crazy like that. That means if you make 10% on your money, you're just breaking even because the value of the dollar is going down so much. So you have to invest a lot of money to get ahead in life. So anyway, Rule number one is you have to make 10 times more money than your expenses. And when your expenses go up, your income has to go up too, or else you fall behind on this. So rich to me, being rich equals now, wealthy equals later. This is like the summarized version, but the point of this is now is income, wealthy is assets. Rich equals now / income, wealthy equals later / assets. This is a general rule of thumb and something I use for myself. People that are very, very rich, meaning they make a lot of income, they make thousands and tens of thousands of dollars a month. That is what they have today. But if they spend all of that money and don't invest a lot of it, they will not become wealthy. They will be rich. They will make lots of money. They'll have a good lifestyle, but it can go at any second. When you're wealthy, this is investing for later. This is your assets. The wealthy people have assets. They buy houses, they buy businesses, they buy stores, they buy things that are appreciating in asset value. This creates wealth typically later. If I got 500 grand right now and I go buy a Lamborghini SVJ, I look rich. If I have 500 grand right now and I go buy a real estate building, I no longer have 500 grand because now it's signed up in a building. I almost feel broke again. However, you're prioritizing later. The whole summary of like all of this to become wealthy is this line right here. It's 2 words. Prioritize later. That's all you have to do. If you want to become really, really wealthy, make a lot of money and then prioritize it for later on in life. If you want to stay broke forever, make a lot of money and then spend all of it right now. So the kind of analogy and way I look at this in my head is if I'm rich, that means I'm making a lot of income. And that's in the now, that's in the today, that's the present, this week, this month. Where am I going to go for dinner? Where am I going to go for vacation? If I want to be wealthy, I'm prioritizing assets, making money later. How can I make myself paid out 2, 3, 4, 500 grand a year on assets and still have equity in those businesses or those things? So prioritize later is rule number 2. Rule number 3, freedom is the highest dividend. I'm going to write this down. Freedom is the highest dividend. What does that mean? In the short term, you have to sacrifice some freedom, just like everyone else. You have to go to work, you have to do things. But ultimately, the goal of making money should always be freedom. You can become a billionaire and still feel like you're a slave to your money. Do you understand how crazy that is? You can make mountains and mountains and mountains of money, more than you ever dreamed of, but still be tied to money and not be free. That is not the life you want. 99.999% of people do not want that. If you had millions and millions of dollars, but it meant you were tied to your money and you couldn't walk away from it and you were busy all the time and you couldn't focus and you were stressed and you had all these problems, you would be very upset. So freedom is the highest dividend of money. Everything you should be solving for is to eventually create freedom at some point in your life. Now, this is different for some people. Some people love to work. However, they still want to be free. They want to be able to choose to not go to work. They want to be able to choose how to spend money with their family. Do I want my kids to go to private school? Do I not? Do I want my kids to play for this team or that team? Do I want to drive this car or that car? That's freedom of choice. And that is the ultimate goal of money. So when you are focusing on where should I spend my money, what should I do with it, which is going to be part of the next rule, just solve for freedom. It is the highest paying dividend you can have in your life. I'm going to give you a one-liner here that you should remember for the rest of your life. Money's greatest intrinsic value is controlling your time. Money's greatest intrinsic value is how you control your time with it. So money is very, very simple. It's actually not that complicated. It is truly a resource and a tool. You've probably heard the saying that money is a tool before, and a lot of people I feel like don't really get what that means. You start to understand it when you have so much money that you no longer think about money as your bills. You think about money as a resource and a tool to buy things that you want or that you feel like you need in your life. when you're not only making money to survive, that money seems like it is just, you're working for the money. You're just maintaining it. You're just getting it to spend it somewhere else. When you start to make mountains and mountains more than your income, you think of it as a tool. And so the tool that it is best used for is controlling your time, which equals freedom. Rule number 4 is compounding. This one's very, very simple. Hopefully you've heard this one before. Albert Einstein said, compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world because the math on it is insane. Let me give a quick little example. This is the best way to visualize this. Let's say you start investing at 30 years old and you invest until you're 60. So you invest for 30 total years of investing time of $1,000 a month. So 30 years, you start at 30, you end at 60, $1,000 a month. How much money do you think you'd have at 60 years old? You would have invested a total of $360,000. And at the end, when you were 60 years old, it would be equal to $1.2 million. So you spend 360, and over 30 years, you got back 1.2 million. I'm going to give you the different example that shows how insane compound interest is. If I start investing at 20 years old, and I go until I'm 30 years old, so I've only invested for 10 years now, same thing, $1,000 a month, but I started at 20 and stopped at 30. Let me see. I would have invested a total of $120,000. So I've invested a third of the amount for a third of the time. How much money would I have at age 60? 1.4 million. So I would have more money if I invested for 30% of the time and 30% of the money. That's how compound interest works. Time is your best friend when it comes to money. I can't express this more. Like right now, Bitcoin is down to 68 grand during this video, the time of this video. The thing is, I'm not buying Bitcoin to make money tomorrow. I'm buying Bitcoin for 20 years from now for the cost of what Bitcoin is going to be. So I had my friend text me and he's like, hey, can I have some advice? Like, I'm kind of freaking out. My account is down so much because of everything going on in the market right now. What's your best piece of advice? 2 words, zoom out. That's it. Just zoom out and wait 10 years. It's that simple. So compounding interest, this diagram has always blown my mind. I read this originally in Tony Robbins' book about Money Master the Game. And he has a few different analogies in here. Like also, this is compounding at 7% interest. Both of these are. If you earn 11% interest on this, the money goes up like 2 or 3 times this. It's compound interest is the wonder of the world. You should learn it. If you don't know it, you're paying the tax for not knowing it. Rule number 5, the 80-20 rule. Okay. When I started making money, my first year in solar, I did $99,000. My second year, I did $270,000. And my third year, I did $380,000. My fourth year, I did over 500 grand. So my income doubled, almost tripled every single year for the first 4 years. That happens to cause lifestyle creep, meaning I've never made 200 grand or 300 grand. And so I went and started buying stuff that I shouldn't have bought. When I made my second year, when I made 270 grand, I bought a Tesla that was brand new off the lot. I took a vacation to Greece that cost me 25 grand. And I spent a lot of other stupid purchases that I never should have spent. Now, today, I won't even spend that kind of money on a vacation because I realized how pointless it is to do that. You can get vacations for a third of the price, but I just thought, buy the most expensive Airbnb I could find, fly first class, and do all the cool stuff because now I have the money to do so. Well, you learn, you probably shouldn't do that. So, what is the 80-20 rule for me? 80-20 can be used in so many different scenarios, but for this exact reason, 80% of my money compared to 20% of my money. 80% of money I spend like I'm gonna live for 60 plus years. So I'm investing for when I'm old and I need it. And then 20% of my money, I spend like I'm gonna live for 6 more months. This is my analogy. It works for me. I'm recommending it to you, but you don't have to do this. When I look at my money that's coming in, I'm making 10 times the money. So let's just say, if we go back to the first rule, I'm making 10K, or my expenses are 10K a month, but I'm making 100K a month. So I'm spending 10 to live. That's 10% of my money. The other 10% is another 10K, right? And 80K is going to go away to investments, back into the business, making money. So this is smart, we'll say. I'm being smart with this. This, I'm blowing. I allow myself to spend that 10K because I'm putting 10K back into my living expenses, which is good. 80K is going back into smart investing, whether it's into the business, into my house, buying assets, buying things that make me more money. And then that 10K, I'm allowed to just blow it. Because I may die in 6 months, 2 years, 5 years. I don't know when I'm going to leave this earth. So I got to spend some money to have some fun. So my rule for my making money and my spending money is I spend 20% of my income on whatever I want to spend my money on. So therefore, if I want to buy a new car or buy this thing or buy a trip to Dubai or Disney World, whatever I want to go, that's the money I have to spend. I look at what did I make that month or what am I making this year on average. I factor that all down to, okay, how much money is 20% of my income? That's the money I'm allowed to blow. This has allowed me to get ahead and completely change. From 2 years ago, I started investing into IRAs and things like that, and I'd put like $1,000 a month away. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, I would go back to my advisor, we sit down, and I'm like, so how am I doing? He's like, you got 30 grand in your account. And I'm like, how? I've been investing all this money. He's like, you're only investing $1,000 a month. Like, that's not crazy. That's going to take you 30 years to get to $2 million. I'm like, hold up, what? I got to invest more money. Then I up it to 10 grand. Then I up it to 20 grand. Now I up it to 30 grand. Now my accounts are growing at significant value because compound interest over the last 6, 7, 8 years I've been investing, and I'm investing a huge amount a month. All of a sudden, my equity in my assets in business is way, way, way up. So now I feel like I can spend more money. So anyway, this is my rule. It's rule number 5, the 80-20 rule. 80% of my money, I spend like I'm going to live for 60 more years. The other 20% of my money, I spend like I'm only going to live for 6 more months. To summarize this whole video, I actually said this in a previous video before, but money is like a jealous lover. If you take your attention off of money, it will take its attention off of you and go in somebody else's pocket. So you have to pay attention to the money, and I suggest you have rules for spending money. I think the hardest part about when you're increasing your income is not living in lifestyle creep and not just starting to blow more money because you feel like you have it. And it's okay for a year or two. I think everyone's going to make some mistakes and spend money they shouldn't have. I mean, I still do to this day. But over time, you have to get a control of your spending habits, or else you will make more money and not feel any wealthier. And that is the worst thing in the world. There's nothing worse than going from 80 grand a year to 300 grand a year over the course of 5 years and still feeling like you're broke. The point of doing it was nothing. You probably had to work a whole lot harder, or at least have a really, really good strategy and put some time, effort, and energy to increase your income that much. And if you increase your expenses just as much, it's all a waste. Wealth at the end of the day is what you take home and what you keep, and rich is spending it for the now. That's what I said before. If you want to be rich, you go buy all the crazy stuff now. If you want to be wealthy, you prioritize later. So if you're making more money or you're on the path to make more money, start implementing these rules now. Another phenomenal analogy or rule you can call it is if you don't know how to manage $1,000, you're not going to know how to manage $10,000. You're not going to know how to manage $100,000. So if your income is lower now, learn how to save that money, invest it, and do these rules with it. Then later on, it'll be much easier to do it when you have larger sums of money. Because eventually, like myself and like other business owners here, your bank account may swing by 6 figures on a monthly basis because of expenses or income this month or a big deal or a contract or whatever it is. If you don't have control over your money and your relationship with money, you will burn it to the ground and you will screw this whole thing up. So you have to create a good relationship with money, and you do that like you do any other relationship. You create rules and boundaries for yourself. So that's what I talked about here. These are my 5 rules to how I spend money and how I make money. If you want to create wealth, I suggest you follow these rules. Anyway, thanks for watching. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time.